Now, there's no doubt about it that Bob Iger's cost containment plan is really wreaking havoc, not just on Lucasfilm, but also for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and everything Disney related in general. About spending less and making less, Bob Iger seemingly tries to rave about this idea when in reality, it's really what's going to lead to Disney's demise in the years to come, as simultaneously stocks are meeting an all-time low, as well as a lot of decision-making processes that are being done by Bob Iger and the Disney board are really not well met with their customers. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support, and let's get right into exactly what's going on here with George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and a lot of other aspects surrounding Lucasfilm. Now, one thing about this that has a lot of people very much on edge is exactly what Kathleen Kennedy is about to do to the Star Wars brand. We already know that her contract is a very complex one that has a lot to do with the board members being very much involved in a constant shakeup. There's a lot of board members defending her, and others that are the minority that are trying to get rid of her to get her out of Lucasfilm, where they do have multiple people on standby to take over as the president of the company, if and when that time ever comes, that Lucasfilm, pretty much comes to a point where Kathleen Kennedy gets swapped out. Now, what's interesting about all of this has a lot to do with exactly what's going on right now with George Lucas and what Kathleen Kennedy recently did and how this also involves the Disney board. Let's discuss. Now, specifically, with Lucasfilm going through many issues right now behind closed doors, Kathleen Kennedy recently convinced the Disney board to cancel 2 major Star Wars projects that were in the works at Lucasfilm that were going to be considered a love letter to George Lucas by Jon Favreau, and projects that many George Lucas loyalists were going to work on. This consisted of a Star Wars Underworld series, Season 1 and 2, that were going to complete, of course, the initial plans that George Lucas had back in 2007 that was supposed to be the first live-action series. Not only were many George Lucas loyalists fired by Kennedy, not of course too long ago, from certain projects, but a major project serving as a TV show that has been in the works for over 2 years was canceled altogether, as Kennedy convinced the Disney board that this project was going to be way too costly for Lucasfilm to handle, as it required tons of CGI and loads of practical effects and complex set builds that were going to meet with an insane budget. The series was planned to also be executive produced by George Lucas, surprisingly, which had a planned release date window of 2026. However, that was before the ongoing Hollywood strikes going on right now. Now, let me just pause here quick before I get to the next big piece about this development. Now, we talked about this 2 years ago. You guys may recall that Star Wars Underworld was back on the table over at Lucasfilm, and that Jon Favreau made it happen, and how Disney at the time was really much, on board with this idea. They were very much passionate and optimistic about this really becoming a great hit TV series. Now, a little rundown. I don't know if you guys knew this, but there does actually have a lot of things going on right now between Disney and George, but there is a specific series of footage that you can find online of all the test footage of the original 2007 Star Wars Underworld that never came out to be, that was supposed to be essentially revived by George Lucas executive producing it and being handled by Jon Favreau. And this was all sabotaged, all because of Kathleen Kennedy recently, as she had to convince the Disney board to move ahead with all of this. And she doesn't have all the creative power in the world like she used to 3 years ago. It has been, quite reduced over time. So she had to get the Disney board to pull the trigger on this one. Now, this is where things get more intense because, believe it or not, this project was considered a direct sequel to that of Revenge of the Sith. Some of you may say, well, Mike, the Bad Batch is basically the same thing. Yes, but this was going to be more of a movie-like experience in a two-part format, similar to Andor. It was going to be only 2 seasons long, and it was going to stop at that. So, moving onwards here, this is where things begin to unravel even further, is that George Lucas is reportedly very heartbroken over Disney even listening to Kathleen Kennedy and did everything in his power to stop this on what was supposed to be George's dream show to become a reality from what he was originally trying to complete, serving as a sequel to Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, that would actually showcase the criminal underworld, fallen Jedi on Coruscant after Order 66. Between the firing of Lucasfilm employees from Skeleton Crew Season 2 and the Acolyte that so happened to be loyals of George Lucas, along with the recent cancellation of George Lucas's dream project, Star Wars Underworld. This was a series that was going to be very much movie-like, serving as a mixture of both Blade Runner and Star Wars in one. With a planned budget of $17 million per episode, though the number of episodes planned were a mystery, they were reportedly longer than Mandalorian traditional 8 episodes. Now, the traditional 8 episodes of Mandalorian, a lot of people really, expressed that they always wanted longer episodes per Star Wars show, so I can respect how basically, Disney wanted to expand the number of episodes for a George Lucas project, which would have been probably one of the better events of Star Wars and one of the better iterations, even, I think, more impressive than Mandalorian if it was really going to honor the original take on Star Wars Underworld. But the fact that Kathleen Kennedy went out of her way to convince the Disney board to cancel out this project, to fire these Lucasfilm employees that were George Lucas loyalists, especially off of Skeleton Crew and the Acolyte. Some of them were working on that show and raised concerns about Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland's vision of said shows. And it just goes to show you how she really can't take criticism very well. Anybody that challenges Kathleen Kennedy's overall approach to a Star Wars show or to a Star Wars project in general, she either lets them go or they run into creative differences where the creators end up leaving or just go on a hiatus and everything leads up to, going on the back burner. We've seen this time and time again over the years with Kathleen Kennedy, so it's not that big of a surprise here that she got Disney to cancel out one of the most important Star Wars projects that I believe would have really been a big surprise to a lot of hardcore fans out there. And the fact that it was going to be a mixture thematically of Blade Runner and Star Wars mixed into one, I think it would have been quite unique to kind of dive into the criminal underworld and focusing on fallen Jedi after the events of the 3rd prequel trilogy movie and really focusing on everything that happened after Order 66 in greater depth. I think that it had a lot of potential and value there that they really could have pulled from. So that just goes to show you how out of touch, once again, Kathleen Kennedy really is by canceling out George Lucas's dream project that could have been, that was going to honor the original vision back in 2007. Again, guys, check out those leaked test footage examples of Underworld back from 2007. It's actually quite interesting. So anyway, guys, drop a comment below. Fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. No hiding on one. From night to moon, we hear them moans again.